Our next item and final set of discussion items here will be related to George Floyd Square. And just as a reminder, we are not taking a vote on George Floyd Square today. We are hearing and receiving presentations, and so we're going to have 3 presentations today. The first will be from Public Works, the second will be from Unity Community, and then the third will be from the Community Visioning Council. And I believe we have about 10 minutes for each presentation, and we can be a little bit flexible and then have a discussion as well. So with that, I will welcome first Public Works to begin their presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Cashman, members of the council or committee. My name is Tim Sexton, Public Works Director for the city. I'm joined here today by Adam Heo, who's a Principal Project Engineer in Public Works, and Tiffany Spohr, who's an Assistant City Attorney with the City of Minneapolis. Before we get started, I also want to recognize the cross-section of city employees who have worked really hard on this most recent effort over the last 10 months, particularly Fontaine Burris and in Public Works and Alexander Cato in the Office of Public Service. And a real sincere thank you in advance to all the community members joining us here today, and for all the community members who have engaged on this project over the last multiple years. So today's presentation, just to set the table here, it's a response to the legislative directive that was adopted by the City Council on February 27th, 2025. The directive came from Council after the City Council referred the proposed flexible open concept layout to the clerk last winter. Today's presentation is a summary of the work that's happened over the last 10 months, and more detailed information has been uploaded to LIMS, including a full report and a summary of all the engagement that's taken place as part of the response to this LD. And as you mentioned, Chair, and just as a reminder that we're not requesting any action from Council today. This really is just the response from the Council to the Mayor for more information about the feasibility of a pedestrian plaza at the intersection of 38th and Chicago, site known as George Floyd Square. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Adam Heo to present the findings of the legislative directive.
Thank you, Director Sexton. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Adam Heo. I'm a Principal Professional Engineer with Public Works. To set the stage for today's presentation, I'll start with the legislative directive language shown here. Public Works was asked to, number 1, study the pedestrian plaza concept layout for 38th and Chicago according to the state statute. Number 2, provide information on existing pedestrian plazas in Minneapolis. The rest of this presentation will focus on these 2 topics. The state of Minnesota allows a city to create a pedestrian mall to protect public welfare, protect the interests of the public in the safe and effective movement of people, and to preserve and enhance the function and appearance of a city. To establish a pedestrian mall ordinance, the Council must adopt a pedestrian mall ordinance which includes all the required statutory language. This includes adopting the findings required by the statute, officially designating the street or part of the street as a pedestrian mall, and specifying times or days when the street is limited to pedestrians and authorized vehicles such as emergency, public works, maintenance, and service vehicles. The state statute also lays out the protest process for properties that abut the proposed pedestrian mall. If the owners of lands abutting on a street or part of a street proposed as a pedestrian mall representing a majority of the frontage on the proposed pedestrian mall may make written objection to the establishment of the proposed pedestrian mall before the ordinance is finalized. The City Council must halt the process. No similar ordinance can be introduced for 1 year after the termination of the pedestrian mall proceedings. First, I will walk through the pedestrian mall concept layout and the technical analysis in response to item 1 of the legislative directive. Public Works developed a structured approach to completing the pedestrian plaza study with an emphasis on technical analysis agency coordination, and community input. The analysis began with further development of the pedestrian mall concept layout, incorporating technical analysis to refine design elements and evaluate feasibility and impacts. We coordinated with the fire department, CPED, Hennepin County, Metro Transit, and met with property owners and businesses to understand access and delivery needs. We also researched existing pedestrian plazas that City Council requested. Finally, the legislative directive report summarizes the pedestrian mall evaluation. The technical analysis of the pedestrian mall is summarized in 6 areas. I'll talk about each of these on the following slides. Before presenting the detailed technical analysis, here is an image of the pedestrian mall concept layout. I'll highlight a few key features. I'll begin by defining the limits of the pedestrian mall. The pedestrian mall's northwest limit is at the public alley, which has to remain open. The northeast limit is defined by the point where the pedestrian space exceeds 18 feet, which is a maximum recommended width for this type of street. In the Minneapolis Street Design Guide, Chicago Avenue is identified as a mixed-use commercial connector. The recommended dimensions for pedestrian space on this type of street are a 2-foot frontage, 6 to 10-foot clear sidewalk, and 6-foot boulevard or furnishing area, for a total pedestrian space ranging from 14 to 18 feet. Therefore, a pedestrian space wider than 18 feet would exceed the design guidance and was considered part of the pedestrian mall. The southern limit of the pedestrian mall is the north side of 38th Street. The dark gray represents the pedestrian plaza, and the blue area is the memorial space where George Floyd was murdered. A 20-foot clear zone needs to be maintained within the pedestrian plaza to allow for emergency vehicle access and for delivery vehicles that cannot turn around in the cul-de-sac. I'll go into more detail on this in a later slide. Finally, the proposed BRT platforms are shown on Chicago Avenue, south of 38th Street. However, buses will need to divert off Chicago Avenue to travel around the pedestrian mall. I'll discuss transit service impacts later in the presentation. I'll share a few renderings of the pedestrian mall. The first image shown shows what the pedestrian mall could look like. This view is north of the cul-de-sac, looking south towards 38th Street. This view is south of 38th Street, looking north towards the pedestrian mall. This view is inside the pedestrian mall, looking north. Now, I'll get into the technical analysis, starting with emergency vehicle access. Based on coordination with Minneapolis Fire Department, emergency vehicles would require the ability to access or drive through the pedestrian mall for emergencies in or near the pedestrian mall. As a result, the design includes a 20-foot clear zone per the fire code. This zone is outlined in red on the slide. The clear zone cannot have any fixed or movable obstructions, including lights, signs, gates, bollards, trees, planters, seating, vendor carts, or snow storage. A 4-inch cul-de-sac curb is designed on the north and south ends of the pedestrian mall that can be driven over by emergency vehicles. We coordinate with Minneapolis Fire to confirm that their fire trucks can drive over the curb and allow for equipment clearance. To allow for emergency vehicles to drive through the pedestrian mall, parking will not be allowed. Parking will not be allowed in the cul-de-sac. This will be posted with signs, but will be challenging to keep clear. In order to maintain emergency vehicle access around the pedestrian mall, parking will be removed on the north side of 37th Street between Columbus Avenue and Chicago Avenue due to the narrow street width. Parking on Columbus Avenue and Elliott Avenue will be monitored for possible parking restrictions or removal. Traffic impacts. There are about 2,900 vehicles per day on the 3700 block of Chicago Avenue. With the pedestrian mall, roughly 550 vehicles per day would divert to Columbus Avenue, Elliott Avenue, and 37th Street, which is a notable increase for those low-volume streets. The remaining traffic will shift to Bloomington Avenue, Park Avenue, and Portland Avenue. Pedestrian safety. This table shows crash data for the last 10 years. There were fewer crashes at 38th in Chicago from 2021 to 2025 with the center island and all-way stop conditions. Crashes involving pedestrians and bicycles over the last 10 years show that all crashes occurred on 38th Street or on the south leg of the Chicago Avenue intersection, meaning there were no crashes in the area where the pedestrian mall would be. We also looked at crashes on the local streets, 37th Street, Columbus Avenue, and Elliott Avenue. The crash frequency was higher in 2020 and 2021 during the closure of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue compared to either before or after the closure. Delivery access. Around 12 businesses receive 40 to 45 small vehicle deliveries per week, which includes pickup trucks, vans, box trucks, such as UPS and FedEx. These smaller delivery vehicles will be able to turn around in the cul-de-sac and also use the nearby alleys. Larger vehicles are unable to navigate the cul-de-sac or the nearby alleys and will need to drive through the pedestrian mall to enter or leave Chicago Avenue. Emergency vehicles and larger maintenance vehicles would also need to drive through the pedestrian mall. In total, about 20 vehicles per week are estimated to drive through the pedestrian mall, including beverage trucks, tractor-trailer type trucks, and large maintenance vehicles. Transit service. The D-Line BRT project upgraded and substantially replaced the local Route 5 when it opened in 2022. This was a $75 million investment to improve transit service and stations on the 18-mile route from the city of Bloomington to Brooklyn Center, including Chicago Avenue. The D-Line currently serves an average of more than 13,000 riders per day, which is Metro Transit's highest ridership BRT route. Prior to the D-Line, the scheduled Route 5 trip time was about 90 minutes one way. A key goal of the D-Line project was to reduce travel time by 20 to 25% through increased station spacing, in-lane stops, transit signal priority, and other improvements. That project goal equates to about 18 to 22 minutes in travel time reduction. The D-Line was originally planned to operate on Chicago Avenue through this area with stations at 42nd Street, 38th Street, and 34th Street. We coordinated with Metro Transit to identify the proposed D-Line station locations and routing with the street reconstruction. D-Line BRT stops are proposed to be constructed on Chicago Avenue south of 38th Street. These platforms would serve both D-Line and Route 5 buses and will bring transit stops closer to where transit riders live and work. The graphic on the right shows the bus routing with the pedestrian mall. Southbound buses would use 35th Street, Portland Avenue, and 38th Street to travel around the pedestrian mall. Northbound buses would use 38th Street, Bloomington Avenue, and 36th Street. This would increase northbound travel time by 7 to 10 minutes and 4 to 6 minutes of additional southbound travel time with a total round trip of 11 to 16 minutes in travel time compared to buses traveling straight through Chicago Avenue. If the D-Line is on a permanent detour, Metro Transit's goal of 20 to 25% reduction in travel time cannot be met. Finally, The D-Line project was partially funded with federal funds, and a permanent detour would potentially require payback of federal funds. Our final analysis covers maintenance and operations of the pedestrian mall. Full snow removal would be needed for the cul-de-sac, the 20-foot clear zone, and adjacent sidewalks to maintain access for emergency vehicles. Snow removal costs are estimated at $70,000 per winter based on an average winter and Public Works completing the work. The 20-foot clear zone must be maintained at all times, except during permitted street closures, and personal vehicles would not be allowed to use the pedestrian mall for driving or parking. Keeping personal vehicles out of the pedestrian mall, along with keeping the cul-de-sac clear of parked vehicles, will be an ongoing operational challenge. To summarize the results of the technical analysis of the pedestrian mall, about 550 vehicles per day diverted to local streets. The addition of the center island and all-way stop control in 2021 has contributed to fewer crashes at the 38th Street and Chicago Avenue intersection. D-Line and Route 5 travel times would increase by 11 to 16 minutes round trip compared to through routing on Chicago Avenue. Emergency and large vehicles must drive through the pedestrian mall. And finally, $70,000 in annual snow removal cost. We also reviewed other pedestrian mall requirements in the state statute. A pedestrian mall of 38th in Chicago meets the right-of-way criteria since both streets are city streets and not adjacent to another roadway authority. Under the current city assessment policy, 83 properties will be assessed along 38th Street East between 10th Avenue South and Park Avenue, and along Chicago Avenue between 39th Street East and 37th Street East. Approximately $561,000 could be assessed for the project. State statute references the city's best interests. The Minneapolis 2040 plan was used to guide the evaluation of the best interests of the city. The Minneapolis 2040 plan states the city will use this plan to guide decision-making that affects the long-term future of our city as it relates to the built, natural, and economic environment. The analysis considered the consistency of the pedestrian mall concept with each of the 100 policies and related action steps that support the 14 goals in the Minneapolis 2040 plan. The analysis found that 10 policies identified in the Minneapolis 2040 plan apply to the pedestrian mall street concept. More detail of the analysis and relevant policies can be found in the report. Community engagement. Public Works has been engaging the community on visioning and priorities for 38th in Chicago since 2021. From 2021 to 2023, more than 1,000 community members participated, and more than 2,500 comments were collected. In 2024 alone, there were more than 1,000 attendees at project engagement events and 25,000 interactions on the project. Specific to the legislative directive, this past spring and summer, we've engaged property owners and businesses through mailings, emails, and in-person visits to understand access and delivery needs. In August, we shared our pedestrian mall analysis with the community to provide an opportunity for them to share feedback and identify anything we might have missed in the evaluation. We advertised those events in August via mailings, door hangers, the city website, emails using GovDelivery, and social media. The events were well attended. We had over 200 attendees and 179 comments. We also presented to the city's bicycle and pedestrian advisory committees. A summary of each engagement activity and the comments received during the engagement period can be found in the engagement summary included in the report. Next, I'll discuss item 2 in the legislative directive, which involves presenting information on existing pedestrian malls. Nicollet Mall, located between Washington Avenue and Alice Rainville Place. Nicollet Mall was established under Chapter 439 of the Title 17 in the Minneapolis Code as a pedestrian mall with transit service and opened in 1967 following a city council action. This approach was intended to support the revival of downtown retail. It was recently reconstructed in 2017 and features widened sidewalks, programmable zones, public art, and dedicated transit space, and restricts general vehicle access except for deliveries and emergency vehicles. Chicago Avenue Mall, located between West River Parkway and 2nd Street South. Before its conversion to a public plaza, the Chicago Mall was a rail yard and later a parking lot, with redevelopment plans beginning in 1998 and a shift to a pedestrian-friendly space in 2001 to support the Guthrie Theater and connect the city to the river. The mall's design prioritizes pedestrian and bicycle connections, restricts vehicle access to emergency vehicles, and provides open space for events like Mill City Farmers Market. The designation of the Chicago Avenue Mall was established under Chapter 459 of Title 17 in the City of Minneapolis Code. Chicago Avenue in this location was not street right-of-way prior to the establishment of the pedestrian mall. Milwaukee Avenue Historic District, located between East Franklin Avenue and East 24th Street. The Milwaukee Avenue Historic District was originally a 19th century worker street, later threatened by urban redevelopment, but was preserved and rehabilitated, earning national and local historic designations in the 1970s. Its design features a pedestrian promenade with sidewalks, lighting, vegetation. Vehicle access is restricted to alleys and adjacent streets while maintaining public pedestrian and utility easements. Although it operates as a pedestrian-only corridor, it is privately owned and not within the city of Minneapolis right-of-way. Therefore, Milwaukee Avenue is not designated as a pedestrian mall. Last slide. I'll welcome Tiffany, our assistant city attorney here.
Thank you. We wanted to provide a brief overview of ways forward in which City Council will be able to move at a later time. As noted multiple times earlier, City Council and this committee are not taking a vote on the pedestrian mall at this time, at this meeting. So if the council would like to move forward with a pedestrian mall concept, they will need to reintroduce a pedestrian mall ordinance in the 2026 session. This is very much in line with our normal standard procedures when we have a shifting of council, and that's why a potential pedestrian mall ordinance would need to be reintroduced at that time. That would happen sometime probably early next year whenever the council wishes to go forward. And I'll let Mr. Hale introduce or talk about the construction.
Thank you, Tiffany. Chair, in terms of construction, as part of the ordinance for next year, as part of that process, Public Works would restart a broader community engagement effort to develop a more complete and staff-recommended concept layout that is consistent with the new ordinance. Final design would occur in 2027, with construction anticipated to begin in 2028.
If the council wishes to move forward with a flexible open concept, that concept was put on the council agenda for the December 11th date. If council decided they wanted to vote that forward at that time, they could choose whatever they wish to do with that concept, but that would be the time they would first be able to address that concept layout again at this time.
Thank you, Tiffany. Chair, in terms of construction for the flexible open concept layouts, if that is approved, the layout will advance into final design and construction will begin in 2026. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for the presentation, all the information, all the work that you've done. Just a couple clarifying questions for construction duration. Can you talk about the open concept design construction duration timeline?
Good afternoon, Chair Cashman, members of the committee. My name is Don Elwood. I'm the Director of Transportation Engineering and Design. Moving forward with a flexible open, we could begin construction in 2026. It's anticipated to take all of 26, 27, and float into a little bit into 28. Depends on the exact method of delivery, but I would anticipate utility work beginning in 2026 and moving into full construction all of 2027.
Okay, thanks. And I'm really sensitive to the D-line component, the transit component here, and so I just want to be clear that the transit in that open concept would move back to Chicago in 2028. Is that correct?
Chair Cashman, members of the committee, that would be my understanding. And just to clarify, oftentimes on projects you've seen me work on, I say substantially complete on a certain date, but there are still other things that float into the following years. Could be transit stations would need to be constructed, maybe street lights, things like that. Mm-hmm. But the primary construction would be 2027.
Okay, thanks. And then a couple of questions for you, Mr. Heo, was just about the added cost. I heard snow removal as an added cost in the pedestrian plaza, as well as additional assessments. Can you clarify if those, I think it was 500,000 in additional assessments would be because of the pedestrian plaza concept, or would there be assessments involved in any street reconstruction concept?
Chair Cashman, yes, regardless of the layout that is chosen, there will be an assessment component in order to fund a portion of the street reconstruction project. So yeah, under city policy, we do assess for capital improvement projects.
Okay. And what's the difference? Because I saw that you noted that in the pedestrian plaza that there was an additional assessment in that layout?
Chair Cashman, there will not be any additional assessments.
Okay, so it's the same amount of assessments in any layout.
Chair Cashman, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's clarifying. And then snow removal, that's going to be needed no matter what concept is approved? It's not different for each concept?
Chair Cashman, it is specific to the pedestrian mall.
Got it.
Due to keeping access for emergency vehicles. The flexible open concept will not have any snow removal component.
And how much was that additional snow removal cost in the pedestrian concept?
Chair Cashman, we're estimating at $70,000 per winter, based on an average winter.
Who would bear that cost?
Chair Cashman, at this point, it's unknown. We currently have the estimate for the snow removal cost, but I would maybe look for Tiffany here, but I would assume you'd be part of the ordinance, right, in terms of who's responsible for that cost.
Chair Cashman, members of the committee, just to provide a little bit of additional guidance, the state statute does indicate that if there would be any sort of assessments for maintenance, anything like snow removal, work with planters, something like that, if it would be assessed to property owners in that area, that would be noted within the ordinance language. Mm-hmm. And that is why at this time we don't know how that cost would be borne or who would be bearing it, because that would be part of the ordinance construction that would happen at a later date.
Okay, thanks. The last question that I had was just about total project cost. Regardless of the concept, that the final design concept, can you share what the total project cost will be and who's paying for it? The different sources that are being put together to fund it.
Chair Cashman, we have a preliminary estimate for construction, which is $11 million. Obviously, once a approved layout comes forth, we can have a more precise estimate as we go into final design.
And then are there, county or federal funding sources? Is it all city funded? What part would be borne by assessments?
Chair Cashman, I believe at this point it's all local funds at this point. There's no MSA funding for this project.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Jenny gave me a thumbs up, so yeah.
I'm seeing Jenny's approval on that. And then what about the assessment? The assessment part was how much?
Oh, the assessment right now, based on the current, sorry, Chair Cashman, the assessment is based on the current rates, and we're looking at $561,000.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Vita.
Sorry, it's for Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I'm not able to get into queue here. So I do have some questions for staff. Have you talked to the Met Council and Met Transit about this additional time for the D line?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Rainville, yes, we've been coordinating with Metro Transit.
And what's the reaction to adding this extra time to the route?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Rainville, obviously this wouldn't be their preference. This would add additional travel time to the D line in both directions. So, but it is an ongoing conversation with Metro Transit.
Okay. And then how about with the business community? So deliveries, I noticed that delivery is going to be more difficult, especially for large trucks. What is the reaction to the business community for this extra burden on deliveries?
Chair Cashman and Councilmember Rainville, yeah, as part of our coordination engagement with businesses and private owners, we do understand delivery access needs, especially for larger vehicles. As I stated in my presentation, there's no space within the cul-de-sac for them to turn around, so they would need to drive through the pedestrian mall. So, yeah, based on my conversation, they would prefer the open concept layout. But yeah, there will be some challenges with the cul-de-sac and delivery options.
Okay, great. And I don't know if you have this answer or not. This is my last question. The cost so far for community engagement and planning, what is that cost that the taxpayers of the city have paid to date?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Rainville, the overall cost to date, city cost for this project is around $3.5 million. Specific to the legislative directive, it's around less than $400,000 since March.
But in total, it's $3.5 million.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I'd just like to add that it's been more than $3.5 million. It's been millions and millions of dollars of police brutality settlements that have gone on into the city of Minneapolis, where we had the Minneapolis Police Department brutalize our residents unconstitutionally, which has cost us millions of taxpayer dollars, which has led us to the point we are in today, where residents have been severely impacted, which has done a really bad burden to our tax base in Minneapolis. So I'll just, referring to those comments about this, it's also about how much money have we wasted because our police department has literally killed and brutalized our residents.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this portion before we move into community presentations? All right, we'll receive and file that report. Thank you so much for your time. And next we're going to hear from community. So we're going to first hear from Unity Community Mediation Team, and you'll have 10 minutes to present. Welcome up.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Cashman. And let me say, was that, I just asked, was that a council and mayor presentation or just a council presentation?
What's that? What's the question again?
Was it a council presentation or the mayor and the council?
Oh, the legislative directive?
Yeah.
That was Public Works speaking, city staff, under
okay.
the mayor's.
Well, I'm not going to, because there's so much just happened there.
Yeah.
And then Councilmember Chavez, don't use that to what we're trying to do. Talking about they spent $3.5 million.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought it was $2 million a minute ago. So you just threw me off there. But I'm gonna step back because I asked Councilmember Chavez and Cashman to meet. Chavez met with the business people over on 38th Street, the UCMT, Unity Community Mediation Team, which consists of the African American, the Black Church, the Native American community, Somali, Latino community, all working together and to come in and support the 38th Street business, quarter the people on 38th Street, and doing what they trying to do what they want us to do over there. I live over there down the street. You done been over there, Councilmember Chavez. So I'm gonna let them do their speaking, and yeah, I just, a lot of stuff going on, but go ahead.
All right, welcome up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and council members. I appreciate being here. My name is Lachelle Cunningham, and I was born right on 38th in Oakland, right up the street from 38th in Chicago, where we're talking about. Also, I'm the owner of City Food Studio now, which is at 3722 Chicago Avenue South, so right in the middle of this corridor as well. I'm also a fifth-generation Twin Cityan. I am the daughter of Gary Cunningham. If you don't know him, he used to run the Hennepin County Planning Department. He was also reared by my uncle Maurice Burton, who was a big community leader on the 38th Street and 4th Avenue corridor. My mom also worked for CPED for over 40 years, so I come with a legacy of community builders and people who care about this community. As well as people who are here to build community. And so I do that in solidarity, standing here with the businesses in the 38th Street and Chicago Coalition. And today we are going to read to you our support plan, or share parts of our support plan with you. And all of the members of many of the members of our coalition are here to read different parts. So I will start with basically letting you know what our vision is for 38th in Chicago, which historically is and presently known as 38th and Chi, is a vibrant, safe, and culturally grounded commercial corridor. This place is the site of global reckoning. It is also a living, breathing neighborhood where people run businesses, raise children, host community events, and build towards futures of their own making. We honor what happened here and the ongoing movement that followed the murder of George Floyd. We hold space for grief and remembrance. And this place cannot and should not be defined solely by tragedy. The story of 38th and Chi is one of Black and brown entrepreneurship, community resilience, cultural expression, and collective survival. It is a corridor rooted in legacy and brimming with future possibility. We are home to deeply diverse network of businesses, Black-owned, Indigenous-owned, immigrant-owned, women-owned, and legacy establishments that have served this community through times of crisis and rebuilding. The goal of this plan is to elevate their visibility, stabilize their operations, and ensure their role in shaping the future of this district. The 38th and Chicago Small Business Support Plan has 4 parts.
Chair Cashman, committee members, my name is Victoria Lowing. I'm the executive director and one of the founders of Chicago Avenue Fire Arts Center. We opened at 38th in Chicago in 2010. Picking up where Lachelle left off, the first part of the business support plan is reimagining infrastructure for safety, accessibility, and dignity. The physical condition of 38th and Chicago must reflect the pride and potential of those who live and work here. Our streets, sidewalks, signage, and public spaces need immediate and sustained investment to ensure beauty, functionality, and safety. We propose a coordinated infrastructure upgrade plan that includes a variety of things, from permanent trash and recycling bins to regular street washing and seasonal sidewalk maintenance, fresh paint, facade improvements for commercial buildings, improved overhead lighting, illuminated business signage, and the creation of green spaces with raised flower beds, tree plantings, and public seating. Access is also a key concern. The corridor should include curb cuts for ADA compliance and clearly marked parking areas. We recommend angle parking be explored to increase availability. While we support the flexible open concept plan, we're open to exploring the idea of converting the 3700 block to one-way southbound street as a way to balance pedestrian space with traffic flow. Emergency and delivery vehicle access is critical, as is business visibility. We know that this place is meaningful and important, and we believe that the street design can reflect this while still providing movement, whether by vehicle or bicycle, on foot or in a wheelchair, to and through the intersection.
Chair, my name is Eni Augustine. I am the founder of Mystic Healing Stones, which is located at 3805 Chicago Avenue, as well as Technologist Computers. I serve on the Governor's Task Force for Broadband and serve as the chair for Global Entrepreneurship Week, Minnesota. The second part of the business support plan is making meaningful investment in small business and economic resilience. Symbolic recognition, which is all that we've received thus far, is not enough. Real support means resources, access to capital, and long-term stabilization tools. To this end, we propose the establishment and funding of a dedicated 38th and Chi small business support plan, a district-wide economic development plan, and a renewed public commitment to the 38th Street Thrive Plan, with a minimum investment target of $10 million in this cultural district. The city must also maintain all publicly owned infrastructure and properties within the district. A complete list of recommendations to strengthen the economic resilience of the 38th and Chicago Business District is included with the support plan. Some tactics and specific are: 1, the facade improvement grants should remove the matching funds requirement. Okay. I will cede to the next person.
Excuse me, how you doing? My name is Asa Azriel. I am born and raised on 38th in Chicago and a business owner of Plot Gallery at 3730 Chicago Avenue. For some, the fight for justice started on May 25th, 2020. For others, like Dred Scott, who was held illegally as a slave in Minneapolis, just 5 miles south of 38th in Chicago, it started in 1836. When he sued, when they tried to send him back to the South, he sued to be free, and the Supreme Court in 1857 decided that all black people didn't have any rights in America. For my family that came here in 1863, we started on the banks of the Mississippi River and founded the first black church here in Minnesota, Pilgrim Baptist Church. Since the 1920s, the 38th Street has been a sacred place and a safe place for black families. Many who started here in Minnesota and all that have migrated here to the South Minneapolis community. From there, we launched things like the Urban League in 1925, Spokesman and Recorder in 1934, Sabathani and the likes. This has been sacred ground for many in the community for over 100 years. We face challenges to thriving communities such as redlining, where we couldn't move out of the neighborhood, redlining against businesses, where we couldn't have liquor licenses for the businesses and restaurants in the neighborhood, disinvestment, police brutality, displacement. These all been going on for decades. The 3700 block in the immediate intersection of 38th and Chicago is about 40 units. 10 are residential, 30 are businesses. So 75% of the 3700 block is businesses, of which 17 are black-owned businesses and all are minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses. I think that's the most in the city, on any block in the city of Minneapolis. The last few years have been trying for all. But I was happy when I joined the last CBC meeting that I was at on October 18th, when there was unanimously voted against the pedestrian walkway. The street design is important, but right-of-way design is not restorative and it's not justice. It's not an exemplification of justice in any way. I ask that you do not force a dead end on us, but instead fund the 38th Street Thrive and the Small Business Support Plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council, Chair. As many of you know, my name is Bridget Stewart. I'm with Agape Movement, and I am a member of 38th and Chi. I'm a proud member of this community. We do not stand in support of that pedestrian mall. To stand here before you and to hear the city and to hear Public Works throw out a number that is going to include $70,000 when the man standing to my right does the plowing right now for free. I have a problem with that. So in conclusion, I ask that you guys hear me and hear me well. It is time for us to move forward. We will continue to stand inside of tragedy, but we refuse to be held hostage to such tragedy. It is time, it is time, it is time. This is not what I had planned to say to you, but it was moved on my spirit to say it. I hope that you hear the community. I hope that you hear us well. I hope that you hear the CVC behind us. Please note, we do not agree with the CVC plan either, because it's very much like the pedestrian mall plan that's being presented. there's too much money that is being put, and it's not being put in the right places. Take a look at your businesses that will suffer. These are moms and dads who are providing for their families.
Time.
I want to make sure you can add something if you'd like to.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I would like to add something. I would just like to thank you all again for your time and listening to us, and also understand we have submitted our support plan, and the amount we're at about $10 million of what we're looking for investment, and that's about, I think they said $11 million that they were looking for this pedestrian mall. And so I guess my question is, if we're going to spend that money on the pedestrian mall, where's the money for the investment that the businesses in this corridor will need beyond that corridor? And so I just put that on you all's minds and hearts to consider, and thank you for your time again.
Thank you so much, and I want to make sure that we can all access the plan that you've submitted, and I'm wondering if you can make sure to get a copy to Michael over here.
Michael does have it.
Okay, so we can get that uploaded into LIMS.
Yes, Madam Chair, you have copies of the comment, I believe, or the
support plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then that'll be uploaded.
And
Okay,
the budget
thank
was
you.
included with that?
Yeah.
Okay, and it includes the budget. Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you. And I just want to be clear to make sure to say that the project is going to cost $11 million for any street reconstruction project, not one way or the other.
Yep.
So, but that's a commitment too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hope you heard us, Council. Us have this.
All right. So next we will hear from Mylisha from the CVC. Welcome up. Community Visioning Council.
Good afternoon. I submitted a map I would like for you guys to reveal, if possible.
Printed copies were distributed of the map. If you can, would you like to use the document?
If you want to show the map on the screen, you can put a copy of this in front of on that white plate down there.
Hey, Madam Chair, he said we couldn't do that. He said we couldn't do that. We couldn't put nothing. He said we had to talk it out. Ain't that what we just?
I'm okay with verbally using my words. That's good enough.
All right.
My words is good enough. And I submitted my photo before the actual meeting itself.
We've got it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. My words is good enough. I just wanted the rest of the room to see, but my words is good enough.
Yeah, sure.
Or do what y'all want to see?
We're going to put it up there because the public there was no plan presented with photos previously, so like if they have one, I would love to see it too. But the public, if we're going to speak to the public, they should be able to see what we're speaking.
Understood.
Thank you, Jay.
Got that help, Emily.
The new technology, right?
Is there an issue with the camera?
I'm not sure if Paul's coming around to confirm.
Thanks, Paul.
It seems to not be working.
Okay. Do you
so
want
they won't be able to present it.
And Michael, do you have a copy of it?
Correct.
Can you
Copies were
project it?
distributed.
Can you project it?
I don't have that capacity from this.
Okay.
Only that computer can present.
Do we got an HDMI cable? We have an HDMI cable.
There it is. All right, the only way to be able to project is if it was on a USB stick. And so I think without that, oh, we got it? All right, we see it. Welcome to take your seats, everyone. All right.
Thank you for allowing the Community Visioning Council, known as the CVC, to present the community city street plans to you today. My name is Mylisha Smith, and I've been a co-chair of the CVC since October of 2024. We have worked on this plan for a year, and we finally come to design something that represents the businesses, the protesters, the residents, and our monthly meetings are and have been available online and in person at least once a month, averaging 40 people, which have been growing over in the last few months. On May 25th, 2020, the city of Minneapolis is responsible for the death of George Floyd, which erupted a global uprising and led a community resistance to take back the streets and stand for justice. The streets were reimagined by the people as protests are filled in the intersection of 38th and Chicago, which now goes by George Floyd Square. This reshaping of the intersection forced conversation and for the community and neighbors and businesses to notice each other. With that being said, with compliments of the 38th Street Thrive Plan that has already been approved back in 2021. But y'all already know the details on that, so I won't dip into that. The city of Minneapolis attempted to get ahead of the community and come up with two concepts of the redesign of 38th and Chicago George Floyd Square, but respectfully, y'all were out of place. And with that being said, we have come to a compromise and decided to utilize the public works designs to help us figure out what we should do with this space. And we have come to a collective consensus in what works best for everybody. And on top of that, I help the community use their imagination. Help the community use their imagination to help us fix what we didn't like about either layout, instead of just telling city, no, that's not what it is that we want. May I present to you the city's plans that is on the screen, the People's Street plan that is right here on the screen. And what the key elements of our plan is, the 3800 block of Chicago is a two-way street until we arrive at the turnaround in front of 3749 Chicago Avenue South. North of the Memorial, the east side of the 3700 block will have slanted parking. When we arrive to the point of the Memorial, it'll be risen up to the same level as the regular sidewalks to make it a pedestrian space for those not just visiting the memorial, but also enjoying whatever is in this intersection. There will no longer be, and with that, there will be a one-lane, one-way southbound on the side of the memorial. There will no longer be a northbound lane directly in front of the memorial. This designated space for the memorial will continue to have a similar footprints to its current location. The Fist and the Garden will continue to serve as the roundabout in the center of the 38th and Chicago intersection, with allowing the other four Fists to remain in the space with a little garden spot with it. Stop signs will continue to be the primary form of traffic control for the things that are passing through. We have added the green space, or continue to add on the green space that was already there that you guys that Public Works suggested. We have not yet determined where the bus stops will be located. However, I am speaking with the neighbors who are bus riders, and they are okay with the current bus stops for the 38 bus that rolls up 38th Street. The current stops are at Park Avenue and 10th Street, or 10th Avenue, which works currently with the intersection is only a block away. And with that being said, the D line coming back to Chicago Avenue with the location on where it stops be determined, and how it gets to and from there will be determined. That is continuing conversations with Metro Transit and the neighbors at this moment in time. Now, let me explain to you why this is the best plan for 38th Street and Chicago's communities to be able to thrive. One, the businesses. It brings accessibility where things can still be able to function regardless of what is happening in the memorial. It brings parking, which gives the businesses, and not just the businesses. There's a black man named Patrick Rohde that lives and owns his house on the 3700 block of Chicago Avenue that's been involved in these conversations, and he would like to still be able to utilize the space because it's not just businesses that's only in this space. And there's other residents that live above the buildings that are in that space currently. Also, it brings the investment, basically the 38th Street Thrive Plan in place to help bring the investments that is long overdue for this intersection and this corridor. Two, it brings people safety. A raised pedestrian walkway in the streets. The cars have to yield for the people. The people shouldn't have to yield for the cars. And most of the time when people are out in that space, they don't even realize that they're standing in the street, that they're so focused on just taking in this space, in this monument space that they're standing in. It brings memorial engagement, basically a slow-paced space, because like I told you, like mentioned before, this gave us time to be able to see each other, hear each other, taking whatever each other is saying into consideration. Also, it creates an event-friendly design that we can be just community. We started as a protest, but we learned how to be community in the process. And three, building community. It nurtures an environment for people to gather, fosters improvement relationships between the residents and the businesses because because we all became aware that 38th Street, the history of 38th in Chicago, and the memorial needs to coexist. And our design is compatible with the 38th Street Thrive Plan and also the 3 bids that are currently at the People's Way RFQ presentations. And my conclusion is this design is the best design for the community at this moment in time for the not just the intersection but the 38th corridor to be able to strive. 1, because the businesses will be able to have the investments and accountability that they need for people to enjoy their services. 2, the pedestrian traffic will increase because the design nurtures safe spaces for the community to engage as neighbors as we also welcome visitors. 3, this monument space will be set in the future development of 38th in Chicago and George Floyd Square must nurture community engagement and thriving neighbors and Black excellence. In doing so, we honor those who died unjustly, like Dante Wright, like Imez, like Murphy Ranks in the intersection. Oh, and also Nene. Yeah. There's a lot of people that just unfortunate things be happening and continue to happen and been happening for decades. And they died unjustly because the city's historical unjust practices and policies over decades that impacted the Black community. We honor the cultural diversity that has grown from our 4 neighborhoods, and we honor those who live on to demonstrate and inspire towards Black excellence and liberation. Thank you.
Thank
you. Questions?
All right. Do you want to go ahead and switch the view back so we can see the presenters? All right. Thank you so much for your presentation as well. We're going to open to some discussion. So first I'll recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you. I don't have questions for you all, so if you want to sit down, that's fine. I just have some discussion around there was a comment made about the pedestrian mall being Public Works' idea, and that's just not the case. It wasn't in this presentation, but just today it was said that it was Public Works' idea, and it wasn't Public Works' idea. It was actually the idea of the community. They talked about hundreds of conversations they had with community, millions of dollars that have been spent in community, and the open concept is what came out of that. The pedestrian mall or whatever the decision was made was not a Public Works decision. I just want to be clear about that. Public Works did not come and say that you have to do this on 38th in Chicago, and that's what was brought before us. We actually have had many presentations about options. There's been a lot of community outreach. There's been a lot of investment in what I believe are the wrong things if we're talking about $3.5 million. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on where the idea of any concept came from. It came from the community, not from Public Works.
Understood. Yep. Do I get a comment or
do you want to comment on that?
I just. Okay,
Okay.
It wasn't directed at me. That's why. Understood.
Yeah.
All right,
I
thank
think
you.
what I'm going to
that this was not brought up at this presentation.
What I'm going to do is ask if Public Works can come up for a couple more questions just following these presentations, and then I think we're good for today to close and let everybody sit with all the information they've received. Director Sexton. I think what I want to understand is some of the recommendations that are brought forward from both of the groups who spoke today involve some of those similarities involve some elements like flashing stop signs, involve slanted parking, involve a raised intersection, involve one-way southbound traffic. And I want to hear a little bit from your engineering perspective about the feasibility of incorporating these elements into the design that you've already put forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Cashman, members of the committee. Tim Sexton, Public Works Director. We did have some sense of what some of those elements are, things like you mentioned, whether it's pedestrian safety elements, raised intersection or raised crosswalks. Those are all things, and increased greening and vegetation in the corridor. Those are all things that either can be or are already part of the flexible open concept that was suggested last year. Some of the other elements, like the southbound, converting Chicago to one-way. That's something that we'd need to do more evaluation on. And I think one thing that is probably worth clarifying that can be a little confusing, because what we presented in the past looks like a drawing, you know, that it's a plan, but there's actually a lot of work that goes into that. And while it's not, doesn't have every exactly where the curb's going to be or every thing down to the nearest inch, we've had to evaluate drainage. We've had to evaluate things that go on underneath the ground, things that you don't see. So while what we presented looked fairly simple, there's actually a lot of work that went into that. And so some of those changes, like that conversion that was suggested, is something we can look into, but it would actually take quite a bit of work to do that, and time and cost to be associated with that.
What would you anticipate would be a timeline for doing that? I'm just trying to make sure that we're all clear about timelines that are involved, because for me, it's important to start construction in this area to make sure that we're getting investment into 38th and Chicago as soon as possible. And I want to be eyes wide open about what further changes to designs are going to take in terms of time.
Yeah, Chair Cashman and committee members. I think we would have to follow up on that exactly, but we are talking months, not weeks. And given where we are in the timeline already, that type of additional work, I think it's safe to say, would push construction until at least 2027.
Okay. And then can you speak on the angled parking and the raised intersection proposals and whether those are feasible within the open concept design?
Yeah, I can speak to that generally, and if you want more detail, Adams here can provide that. So right now the current design has parking on both sides of the street. It's approximately 15 spaces total. The angled parking would have a similar number of spaces, maybe one or two fewer, but it would only be allowed on one side of the street, is what I think we would be the restriction on the one-way, that one-way concept, just because there would be less space available.
So angled parking is feasible within the open concept?
Within the flexible open concept?
Yes.
That one is, I'll let Adam confirm that.
Chair Cashman, yes. Angled parking would be feasible, but it would only be on one side of the street, not both sides. Currently, we have parking on both sides. Around, Director Sexton mentioned 15 spaces. With angled parking, it would probably be closer to 13, maybe 14 spaces.
So the angled parking would actually would decrease the amount of parking spots instead of increasing it?
Chair Cashman, so in terms of spaces, it would be similar to having parking on both sides, right? But in terms of the way these angled parkings, the dimensions of it, it would not be feasible to have on both sides of the street, right? It would be based on just having it either on the west or east curb line of that block. But it would be similar in terms of spaces.
So either 13 to 15?
Yeah.
Okay. And then can you speak to the feasibility of the raised intersection at 38th and Chicago, including raised crosswalks? And this is very similar to the Chicago Ped Mall that we have down at the Mill District Farmers Market. We have raised street in Uptown as well by the Green Room and others. So I'm wondering if it's feasible to add into the design that you have.
Chair Cashman, with the flexible open concept, the 38th in Chicago is proposed to be raised. The entire intersection will be raised. So when it comes to raised crossings, that's a little different. Either the intersection has to be completely raised, or we can go with crossings that are raised. Currently in the flexible open concept, the entire intersection will be raised with that design.
And how far north does that raised intersection go?
Chair Cashman,
is it spanning the duration of the memorial?
Chair Cashman, that'll be a final design question, but it would go north probably 50 plus feet. But I think memorial space goes maybe 100 feet north, so it would be probably half that distance.
Okay. Thank you. I think that is all we have for today, unless anyone has any other comments or questions they'd like to ask. All right, so seeing none, we'll receive and file all three of these presentations. And I believe that's the end of our agenda, so without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.